Hello and welcome. This is Coding in Python Part 2. So the intention of this video is to supplement the first video, so make sure you've watched that one first. I will assume you know everything I talked about in that first video. All right, so let's get to it. The first thing we want to do is create a Ripplet. So you'll remember from the first video I told you how to do that. So we're going to choose a new Ripplet here, and we're going to use Python, and we'll name this one Coding in Python Part 2. And then we're going to add a little comment in the beginning here. Always good coding practice to add comments. All right, so some things we're going to talk about. First of all, why would we want to learn how to code in Python again? Well, Python is on the rise in usage, and it has a great supportive community, a ton of people online eager to help you out learning Python and accomplishing whatever coding task you're trying to accomplish. So it's just overall a great choice for those reasons and many others. Remember, we left off right before I began discussing simple conditional statements. So simple conditional statements require us to understand a little bit about logic. So in logic, something can either be true or false. So if we want code to be contingent upon a condition, so code that runs depending on a condition, we're going to use this if statement. So if, and then right here after the if statement, we're going to write our condition. So let's say we're asking the user for a number from 1 to 10. And we'll say if that number x is equal to, and it's not just equal, it's the double equal sign. So equal encoding assigns a value. So this says x is going to be assigned the value from this function. The double equal sign asks a question, so it's a logical test. Is it equal to? So let's say if x is equal to 7, we'll say that's the magic number. We'll print, you guessed it. And then we're going to have this else, which means the if statement failed. So if you have an if and an else, the if is going to test a condition. And if the condition is true, it's going to run the code that's tabbed over under the if command. And you've got the else statement here. And what's going to happen there is if the condition for the if statement fails, then the else command will activate. So it's either going to run this code or this code. So it's either going to say you guessed it if they guess 7, or you missed it if they guess anything other than 7. So let's guess 9 here. And it says you missed it. If I run it again, if I guess 7, oh, I know what's happening here. It is a string by default. Remember, the input function always gives us a string. So we're testing here if it's the integer 7. So in order for that to work, we need this also, which will force the integer type onto that x value. Yes, we guessed it with number 7. So that's an example of a simple conditional statement. Let's talk about try and except. So if I do this and I hit A, do you see I get an error? Because you cannot turn A into an integer. So instead of this default error, we can do what's called a try and except. So the way that works is you type try before the code that potentially will throw an error, and we want to tab this over, so that's control and closed bracket. Yes. So we're going to try this, and if we get an error in there, except it's going to print so let's try that again. If I put A now, you see how it says that's an invalid answer. So that's because an exception occurred. If an exception occurred in the try block, which is here, then it's going to do whatever you put under the except block. So try and accept. Searches for errors. And you can't trust user input. Users are going to put invalid stuff into your program all the time. So it's very important to be able to give them a error message that makes sense. That the Python error messages will look like a lot of gobbledygook to a layperson. So you want to give them something that makes sense. That's an invalid, well, we'll say input instead of answer. All right. So complex conditionals. Let's talk about those now. So complex conditional statements. These are joint conditionals. So you've got and or are going to combine these joint conditional statements. All right, so joined with and or. Let me give you some examples. Once again, let's take an input for the user, and we'll say we'll call this one height. And instead of input a number, we'll say how tall are you in inches? And once again, we'll turn it into an integer. Remember that it is a string by default. Okay, so now we want to do some complex conditionals. So let's say we want to know if their height falls into an average range or outside an average range. Okay, so we can do that with this if height, and let's just say arbitrarily average is going to be between let's say 62 inches, which is 5'2", and 70 inches, which is 5'10". So if height greater than or equal to 62 and height is less than or equal to 70, we're going to print and we'll do and I'm going to use something called elif, which is else if. So this says if the first one is not true, then test this. So each subsequent elif is not tested unless all the elifs and ifs above it fail. So if this one fails, it's going to test this, and we'll say height greater than 70 or height less than 62. We'll print your height is unusual. All right, so we'll run this. And how tall are you in inches? Let's just put 70. It tells me I'm average. Let's say 80. And it tells me my height is unusual. So that and means both of the conditionals must be true in order to trigger it. And the or means just one or the other has to be true in order to trigger that. Let's do a little try and except here. And you can highlight a section, hold Control and hit close bracket, and that tabs everything over one space. All right, so let's see. P, yeah, invalid entry. 50. Height is unusual, unusually short in this case. Okay, so that's an example of a complex conditional. Now let's talk about the if, elif, else chain, and I want to show you this visual I've got over here for a second. There we go. So if, and then you have a condition 1. If the condition 1 is true, it will execute the code under it. If not, it will go on to the next thing in the if, elif, else chain, which in this case is elif condition 2. It will do that, but only if the condition 1 is false and condition 2 is true. And then another elif, condition 3, it will do this, but only if condition 1 and condition 2 are false and condition 3 is true. And then finally the else, it says do this if everything above fails. So if all the ifs and elifs fails, then the else will activate. So that's an if, elif, else chain. All right, so continuing with our theme, let's do something about height again. So I'll just copy this first bit. All right, so we'll say if height is less than 60, so that's 5 feet tall, I believe. We'll print you are very short. And then we'll say elif height is greater than 60, greater than or equal to 60, and height is less than, say, 65, let's say 66. We'll print say you are on the short side of average. And let's do another one of these. Remember, copy paste can save you a lot of time. So let's say 66, and we'll go up to 70. We'll just say you are average. Let's do another one here. So this time we'll start at 70. See, I'm picking up where the last one left off in every case. And we'll go up to, let's say 72. And this would be the tall side of average. And then we can say else here at the end. And so anyone taller than 6 feet will print you are tall. Okay, so, and then we want to do our exception. buddy. All right, then we want to do our exception, and let's see what happens here. So how tall are you? Let's put in 70. Tells me I'm the tall side of average. How tall are you in inches? Let's say 50. Tells me I'm very short. 76. Tells me I'm tall. If I put some nonsense in like WW, it tells me that's an invalid entry. So this is an example of an if, elif, else chain with some compound in conditionals. That means they use and or. Okay, so checking if an item is in a list. So this is a conditional we use all the time. And I want to show you guys that real quick. So let's say I've got a list, and on it is people's names. So we've defined our list. Now we're going to check. So if Joe in list underscore 1 print yes. So it's just going to tell me yes. Let's make this a little more interesting. Let's ask our user for a name. We'll say, who should I check the guest list for? And then we'll say, if name is in list, print yes. And we'll say else, print no. All right, so let's run this and see what happens. So who should I check the guest list for? Let's check it for Joe. And we don't need quotes. Oh, this does bring up an interesting thing. See if I type in Joe with lowercase, it says no. It's because we're checking only for the exact value and we're not controlling for user case. One way to do that would be to change this to .title. And that would automatically put anything they type in into title case before I checked it. So now you see Joe is a yes. Let's check for Chad. Nope. Let's check for Judy. Yes. So that's an example of checking a list for a specific item in a conditional. All right, so now let's look at your first task. Let's see here. All right, so multiple skills. Create code that asks the user for a number and then tells them if it's odd or even. So you're going to want to use modular arithmetic for that, where you use the percent symbol. Use the input function to get the number. Create a list of your 5 favorite bands. Make code that asks the user for their favorite band and checks to see if it's on your list and tells them if it is or not. And create code that asks the user for their age and tells them which age category they fall into. So pause the video, see if you can accomplish these tasks, and then start. Okay, welcome back. Let's give this a go. So here we go. Task 1, create code that asks the user for a number and then tells them if it is odd or even. So we'll say num equals input. Excuse me. Enter a number. And so then we want to test if it's odd or even. And that might have thrown you guys for a loop if you didn't understand modular arithmetic. But let me show you how this works. So if number percent symbol 2 double equals 0. So what that does, this percent symbol, modular arithmetic, it's going to just take the first number, divide it by the second number, and return the remainder. So just the remainder, not the quotient. So if a number divided by 2 has a 0 remainder, that means it's even, divisible by 2. So this is a way to test for evenness. So we're going to print, and actually we need to change it to an integer again before we run this. And then I'm going to change it back to a string to print it. Okay. And then we can just do an else here. Because if it's not even, it must be odd. All right, so let's run that and see if it works. We'll put in 10. And let's add this to the end. Yeah, we'll try 11. 11 is odd. Okay. So fave underscore bands. And let's do and 1, 2, 3, 4. One more. Let's put in that one. Okay, so now I'm going to ask the user for their favorite band. And now we're going to say if band in fave bands, we're going to print, yeah, I like them too. Or and then we'll do an else, and we'll print meh. Okay. And let's put in one that matches, which is, and actually we need to do something here, so let me stop this. Let's make it dot title, so we can control for case again. Excuse me, sorry. All right, so we'll put in Metallica. Yeah, I like them too. And let's pick one that's not on my list. Enter number 0, 0. Favorite band, D12. Meh. Okay, so the third task, create code that asks the user for their age and then tells them what category they fall into. So this is going to be a if elif else chain. So what is your age? And let's change that to an integer so we can compare it. Okay, now let's make that a bit bigger, probably easier to see. And let's, might be too big. There we go. And let's start using some conditionals here. So if user age is less than or equal to 17, print You are a child. Now we're going to do elif user age is greater than 17 and user age is less than or equal to 29. We'll say print you are a young adult. Okay, another elif here. And I can just copy this and use that as a template. Probably save us some time. All right, so we want to go greater than 29 and less than or equal to 45. And we'll call that just an adult. And then greater than 45 and less than or equal to 64. Yeah. And we'll call that a middle-aged person. And then the last one here, else. We know that's going to be everybody over 64. So we'll print you are a senior citizen. Okay, so let's run that. Our number deal, taking its time here. Okay, so here's our number. We'll put in 34. It's even. Favorite band, I don't know, Tenacious D. Meh. What is your age? 44. I'm an adult. Okay, so those are ways to solve those three tasks. If you did it a little differently, that's okay. As long as the criteria was met, then that's a valid solution. If it wasn't, just take a second and look at how I did it and consider how you might revise your solution. All right, so let's move on. Next are dictionaries. So this is another type of complex data type, a collection of data in Python. So dictionaries are a list of key value pairs. So they're not a simple list, they're a complicated list. They're not lists of single items, they're lists of key value pairs. So we're basically defining the index. You remember with the list, you had index 0, then index 1, then index 2, and so on. With a dictionary, it's similar, but you're defining each index. Let me give you an example. So I call this dictionary _1, and we determine a dictionary with these curly braces here. So that's the symbol that tells Python this is going to be a dictionary. All right, so we have a key and then a semicolon and then a value. And these are paired up like so. And let's make a couple of these, and they're separated with commas. So we'll make a dictionary with 3 keys and 3 values. All right, and then let's call those individual elements from the dictionary. So you remember before we would use the index 0 for the first, 1 for the second, and that was in a list. For this, we're going to use the key. So if I call key 2, then that's going to print out value 2. If I call key 1, then that's going to print out value 1, and so on. So it's a way of defining the index for the value in a list. We call that a dictionary in Python. So it's a type of um, complex data structure. So let's loop through these. So if I want to loop through the keys and values of a dictionary, I need to remember some methods. So if I call, so keys only is dot keys method. Values only is dot values method. And both is dot items method. So the dot, yeah, both, not bot. Yeah, both is the dot items method. So let's loop through the keys only. In a dictionary. So for key in our dictionary dot keys. So notice I'm calling the dot keys method on it. So that's just a list of the keys. And we're going to print those. And I'll comment this out so it's not confusing us. And now if I want to do the same thing for values, looping through the values in a dictionary, I use dot values. That would have worked the other way, but this is better coding practice to name things after what they are. So loop through the keys, loop through the values. And let's finally loop through both. So we need two variables of iteration here, because when we use the dot items method, each item is going to have two parts. So K will be the first part, V the second part, and we'll print them together here. So looping through keys, looping through values, looping through keys and values in a dictionary. Important to be able to do that. Populating a dictionary with a for loop. So let's imagine I want to create a dictionary, and I want it to have a certain number of entries. So for I in range, let's say I want it to have 4 entries. And I need to declare an empty dictionary before I start populating it. You can't populate an empty dictionary, so it has, or a non-existing dictionary, so it has to at least exist. So let's create one. All right. So now that it exists, we can populate it with this for loop. So for I in range 4, we'll say, hold on just one second. All right, so for I in range 4, we want to make an entry in our dictionary. So let's ask the user a question. And let's say favorite food. So instead of your favorite food, let's say favorite food of yours. All right. And then for our dictionary, we're going to say key equals string. Well, let's do it this way. So that's going to give us fave food number and then the number of the loop. And we want to do +1 because it's going to start at 0. And I want this to start at 1. Okay, so I think we're ready for this. Yep, so dictionary _2 key should equal fave _food. And then we'll return that dictionary. All right, so then let's print. No, not return. Sorry, we don't want to do that. Let's just print it. Yeah, okay, that'll be better. And let me comment out this previous stuff so we don't get mixed up. Let's say I like taco, I like burger, and I like steak, and I like ham sandwiches. So notice how it's printing out every time. That's because this print command is tabbed over into that for loop. So if I do it this way, it'll be a cleaner interface. It won't print until the end. All right. So there you go, populating a dictionary with a for loop. Got a task for you guys now. See if you can figure this out. So create code that asks the user for their first name, last name, height, weight, age, and address, and saves this as 6 key value pairs in a dictionary. You won't need a loop for that. You'll just need 6 separate input functions. And then write code that loops through the keys and values on your list and prints them out nicely formatted on separate lines, like so. All right, pause the video, see if you can do that, and then come back and I'll help you see if you got it right. All right, welcome back. Let's try to solve these tasks. First of all, create code that asks the user for their name, first name, last name, height, weight, age, and address. Okay, so first of all, first name equals input. And I'll just say first name, question mark. And I can copy this and paste it. Save me some time for the last name. And then the height. And then weight. And age. And address. All right, now we're going to populate the dictionary. So I need to make a blank dictionary first. So we'll call this profile equals blank dictionary. And then I'll say profile first name equals first name. And then profile last name equals excuse me, last name, and then profile, height, equals height, profile, weight, equals weight, profile, age, equals age, and last but not least, profile, address, one of those words that's real hard to spell. Hopefully I'm spelling it right there. Equals address. Okay, so now we've built our profile with this code. Now we want to write code that loops through the keys and values and prints them out in a nicely formatted manner. So let's say for k comma v in profile, print the k comma v. That should do it, I believe. First name, Chad. Salyer. Height, 70. 235. Age, 44. I'll just put 188 here. Oh, forgot the dot items. So, classic mistake here. Yeah, don't forget the dot items method. We had mentioned that previous one. Go through these again real quick. All right, so that accomplishes our task. And functions. So let's talk about functions in Python. So functions in Python. I'm going to comment out all this old stuff here. So these are little blocks of code that you can call when you need them. And they start with this, def. So you're going to put def and then your function name. So our function name is going to be function1. And then here you're going to put the parameters, the argument your function's going to take. So let's just create one that does not require any arguments here first. And let's imagine I want one that does not return a value, but just prints things out. So let's actually call this greet function. All right, so we're going to take an input from the user. And then we're going to greet them. With a personalized greeting here. So that's a greet function. So once I've defined it, I can now call that over and over again by just using this text right here. So if I run the code now, it's not going to do anything because I've named the function and I've defined it, but I have not called it. So if I call it here, now you'll see the function will actually run. All right, and I could do this to fix that case issue. Constantly chasing after those. Yeah, and I'm also going to do this. Make our greet function nice. And the neat thing is we can call that over and over again and we don't have to retype that code. So it relates to what's called object-oriented programming. And that's where you basically don't repeat your own work. So you can use it to do the same thing over and over again without having to type all this out. All right, so that had built-in outputs. The print commands were part of the function itself, but that won't always be the case with all functions. So let's make a function that has that takes some parameters, and we'll call this adding up function. And we'll take two values, x and y. Don't forget to put your semicolon at the end of your function declaration. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but there must be a semicolon there. Just like after the conditional and the for loops. All right, so adding up x comma y, so we're going to say sum equals x plus y. And then we're going to return sum. So it's a function that's going to add two numbers. Once again, if I run this, nothing's going to happen because I haven't called the function. And even if I call it, let's run it with 9 and 7. It won't do anything because it's returning that sum, but there's no output involved. So when you have a return like this, you need to use the function inside of an output statement like this. So we see that 9 plus 7 is 16. All right, so that's a return versus a built-in outputs. Once again, I've got a little task for you guys. So try to use the code from task 4 and create a function named profile builder that runs that same code and returns a dictionary, and then use that function to make your own profile dictionary and save it to my profile. So see if you can get that done. Pause the video and then come back when you're finished. Okay, welcome back. So we're trying here to complete task 3. And the first thing we need to do is go back and steal our code from the previous task. And actually, that should be task 5, shouldn't it? Yeah, let me rename that real quick. So task 5 here, we want to use the code from task 4 and turn that into a function. So I'm copying all this stuff we did for the first part of task 4. I'm going to paste it here, and then I'm going to uncomment it, control question mark, and then I'm going to tab it over because I want it to be part of a function named profile builder. All right, and I want this to return that profile. I think that will do it. Create a function named profile builder that runs that code and returns a dictionary. Yep, that looks like that'll do it. And then we're going to say my underscore profile equals profile builder. So that's going to make it for us, and then we're going to print out my underscore profile. All right, let's see if that works. First name, Chad Salyer, 70, 235, 44, address, we'll just put 188. Yeah, okay. So it populated that dictionary, returned it, which assigned it to this variable. Then I printed that out at the very end. So that accomplishes those tasks. That was a little harder than what we've been doing. All right, next, indefinite loops. So we've talked about for loops. What we haven't talked about are loops that go on forever. So indefinite loops. So these are usually while loops. So I'm going to say while, and then I'm going to give it a condition. So let's say run equals true, and while run, print YOLO. It's actually going to be a bad coding practice, but I'll run it just for instruction purposes. So you see that's going to go on and on forever. It'll never stop. Poor coding practice. Loop that's going to go on until the computer shuts down. Okay, so we do want some condition under which it would stop. So let's do while run q equals input how are you today? And we'll say if q double equals bad, well, let's say great. Actually, we want to control for case, so let's do it this way. Then print. Awesome, glad to hear it. And in any other case, and actually we'll add one more thing here that's going to make the loop stop. We can also put break, else print, huh? All right, so if we run this, how are you today? Good. Huh? Bad. Okay. So no matter what I put in, it's going to go on and on forever until I type in great. And it's going to say, awesome, glad to hear it. So it's kind of like a motivational person, or maybe that coworker that's a little too friendly or a little too cheerful, that just won't let up until you tell them you're doing great. All right, so that's an indefinite loop. Got a task for you with regard to indefinite loops. And this is going to be somewhat challenging. Give it a go. If you can't figure it out, that's okay. Come back and we'll figure it out together. But pause the video, give this a try, and come back and we'll see if you got it right. Okay, so let's give this one a go. Create a function called myBudget. So define my_budget, and it takes an arbitrary number of user inputs. So we're not going to take an argument. We're going to get our user inputs here. So put while true. In other words, it'll go until we tell it to stop. Let's see. Budget. And I need to start an empty dictionary. So we'll say budget equals empty dictionary, and we'll say budget key equals input. What is the budget category? And we'll say if budget key dot lower double equals done, then we're going to break else. Well, no, we don't need an else there. And we'll do a budget value equals what is the budget amount for that category. And I could get real fancy here and add the actual category name in here. Oh, not dot key, underscore key. There we go. All right, so now we want to say my underscore budget with that key. equals budget underscore value. All right, and then we'll print out the budget. And then we'll call the function. All right, so let's see how that goes. What is the budget category? Let's say food. What is the budget amount for that category? Let's say 200. Function object. Oh, I need to just put budget here, not my budget. Okay, should work now. And I didn't like the way that didn't go down to the next line, so let me fix that while I'm at it. All right, food. Also don't like the way there's no white space there, so hopefully that'll be the last revision. Food, 200. Bills, 2,000. Entertainment, 200. And then we'll type in done. And so that gives us the budget. Mission accomplished. All right. So now let's talk about classes. Okay, classes in Python. Really quickly, this will be the last thing we talk about. It's pretty high-end stuff. Once again, it relates to object-orienting programming. So when you declare a class, you're declaring a special type of variable. So here I've declared the class dog, and I've given myself a comment. And another way to do a comment is with 3 quotation marks. Normally I do it like this, but this can kind of make it stand out if you want a different color for some comments. So it's a simple model for a dog. So the define and then double underscore init double underscore function. This has to be present for every class you create, and it should have all the variables you want associated with your class. So it always has to have self, and then here I want to also include name and age, and then this syntax has to be present to initialize the class. And then here I've declared some internal methods of sit, rollover, and describe. So let's create a dog in this class that I've made here. So let's say my dog equals dog. So that's how we declare it to be an object in that class. And then I need to give it a name and an age. So my dog's name is Titan. He's 10. It's an old Labrador. And now I can call those methods on this. So my underscore dog dot. Okay, so have a little white space boo-boo here. Now we got it. So Titan is now sitting. Good dog. So this is now an object in the dog class that I defined. So this is a special kind of variable. We can give our own parameters and methods, built-in functions too. And I can also call the describe one just for fun here. And you see Titan is a 10-year-old doggo. All right, so guys, that's coding part 2. Hope you've enjoyed it. I've really had a good time putting these videos together, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch it very much. Hope you have a great day.